In this video, I'm going to be showing you how on the insert that I made in some of those packaging, how I can sketch it out using Sample Maker CAD and how I can use parametrics. And the parametrics, so I can assign variables so I won't have to redraw it again. And also I can show it how it's going to be in my Lib product, L-I-B. So first I'm going to come in and sketch out a rectangle. And I'm going to start doing some commands just so it goes a little faster for demo purposes. But that's my D for distance constraint. And I'm going to type in and say I want that to be 3. I'll come and pick this line and hit D. That again gives me that distance, so I can double click in there and I'll give it a different dimension that I want it to be. I'll say, I'll just change the dimension to 4 and it resizes for me. Now we can also put in the variables or parametric variables. So notice here I'm going to call this insert distance X. You'll see that when I put it in, it'll prompt me. So I'll put in the size that I want it to be. I'll say 3.5. Notice that I did it all in one word. And you have to do this for your variables. That's why I mix caps and lowercase, because later we can do advanced mathematics. So we need to make sure that our variables are one word. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to call this one insert distance Y, and it'll prompt me for what it wants. So I'll say make that 4, so it resizes again. So this square represents the face of that folding carton that I made. So I want to have 2 of them in my insert, so I'm going to come and sketch the other one. So I'll just loosely draw a rectangle, and I'll pick these 2 points and say H, I want it to be horizontally constrained. So you'll notice when I do it here, that point and that point H, you can see the little legs that hook left to right. I'll then pick these 2 lines and say they're Q constrained to equal. And again, that little hash mark means those 2 are equal lines. Now I want to do some centering of these 2 rectangles. So I'm going to come and just sketch a line. We're able to take a line. I'm going to put it on there. I made a slight mistake, but that's okay. I'll just pick that line. I didn't have that end point to this line, and I'll say go to the midpoint. This line, I want that end point to go to this line, M for midpoint. So now they're joined, and they're joined horizontally, and they're joined to be the same distance at the top. I can also come in and do my shortcuts to make it a construction line, because that won't be in my actual drawing. I'll pick those 2 points, and I'll assign now that I want this distance. I'm going to make this one here gap between insert. As soon as I hit enter, it's going to prompt me. I'll put in the size that I want. And then again, it'll resize. So now I have my 2 rectangles. I have them centered, and I have the space in between. I'll draw the rectangle to the outside. And now I want these 2 centered within this panel. So again, I'm just going to use this concept of a line. I'll make it a construction line, and I'll say that endpoint to the midpoint of that line. This endpoint to the midpoint of this line. Then this line I want to be V vertical. And you notice now I'm constrained in that panel, and I'm constrained up and down. Now I want to have this distance around the outside of the squares. So I'll pick these 2 points, and I'll say a vertical projection. And I'll come in, and I'll give this a measurement that I'll call perimeter gap. It'll prompt me for what I want perimeter gap to be. Now I'm going to come down. This is kind of a neat feature. If I have to use different variables and I don't want to keep retyping them, I can copy it. And then I'll come down here and pick these 2 points. And I'll say from here to here, give it a vertical projection. Then I can double click in there and right click and paste. So now I didn't have to retype that variable, and it saves me from a spelling mistake potentially. So I'll come over here and do this dimension with a horizontal constraint. And again, I'll copy and paste that dimension in. So now I have my internal panel set with the 2 cutouts. I'll come up above here, and I'm just going to sketch a shape, and it's going to be the top of the flap that I want to have tuck in. You can click and drag points around once they're sketched, and that's kind of in the instructions that I showed you. So if I come in here, I'll say that point to that point are on. I can drag this point around if I want to. I can drag the other side if I want to. So it's already horizontal. I don't have to constrain that. So I'm going to pick this line and that end point, and I'm going to vertically constrain them. And on this one, I'm going to come in and give it a variable, and I'll call this insert depth, because I really wanted it on the actual thing. I made it half the height, or, so that some of the box stuck up. So I'm going to control that leg. I'm going to call it insert depth. I'm going to pick these two and put an angle on it. And then instead of having this be a variable, I just want it to be 45. Then I can select this angle, these two lines, and the other side. I'm going to use my Q command, which is equal, constrain equal, and now you'll notice those are the same angle. So I could go down, and on the bottom and the left and right side, I could redo that process, but to save time for this video, you would just duplicate that to do the other 4 sides. I'm just going to practice and show you again how I would do now that internal cutout piece and some centering. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle again. And then I can come in and I want to use my line sketch, and I'll put in a line. And this time I did it as a con right from the start. So I'll say from there to there on the midpoint, from that point to there, and then make it vertical. So now I'm constraining that centered in there. I'll put in another guideline. That's kind of nice in the system. I don't have to worry about it. I can just put a line wherever I want. And then when I pick it, again, I can take this point, and this time I'll say it's on O to that one, and then it's on the midpoint of this line. I have an extra line there on accident, so I do make mistakes. Easy to undo. I just hit my delete key, or I can right click and delete it. And then I'm going to constrain this one horizontally. So now I'm centered again, another rectangle in there. If I want, I can put in those little diagonal cuts, and I can also put in a distance if I want. So I'm just going to use my sketch tool. If you're going between points, you'll notice it finds them, and when it highlights, it just snaps to them. So I'm just hitting my S key and then clicking between the 2 points. So I can just finish out those corners. Now if I want to, I can pick this one, and I'm going to give it whatever that little leg depth that I had. And again, I can use my copy and paste trick that I did before. So I can go select insert depth, right click copy, click in here, right click paste, and hit enter. So you can see I'm able to go through and define parametrics, do constraints, and make any custom drawing that I want. I can have it laid out in the system for me. I can go and pick different line types. So I can come in and assign styles. So I'll say these are going to be crease lines. So I can do all the different types of lines that I may want in a drawing. So I could go and convert the lines. More importantly, I need to save them out. So when I save this file, where they're called smak files for Sample Maker, those are also used in our Lib product. And that's where you can make all your creative designs and have them resizable for non-CAD users. I can also come in and save them out, and I can export this 2D. So here, if I wanted to make the previews for the variables, if I wanted to stick it in a graphic or another CAD program, or if I wanted to put it out to an XY cutter, I have a lot of different formats that I can export the file. So from there, you can communicate out the drawing you want. Thank you.